Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us live. If you're here with us live, leave a message in the chat box and say hi so I know you're here. So today I am here with editor Madison Parrotta. And do you want to say hi and introduce yourself, Madison?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Madison Parrotta. I am currently an editor with Includus Publishing, and I'm a sensitivity reader with Salt and Sage Books. I also do like proofreading and developmental editing on the side as well. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me, Vanessa.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Um, so, for those of you who may be new to my channel, the Writing Diversity series is a new series that I've started, and we'll be doing once a month interviewing people from diverse backgrounds and talking about what writers should know when creating a character from that background. So, for those of you who may not know this, July is actually Disability Pride Month. So, happy Pride, everyone. And so, I wanted this month's interview to be with someone from the disability community, and Maddie, as well as a few other people actually that I'll be interviewing later on this year, have graciously volunteered to do this interview. So thank you, Maddie, for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Um, so before we begin with the interview, I do want to remind all the writers out there. I will say this before every interview that I do, that I just want to remind you guys that people are all individuals. So everyone's journey and experience with their disability is going to be different. And Maddie is going to be sharing with us her experience, and I hope it's helpful in your writing. But keep in mind that she does not speak for every single disabled person, nor for every single person with spinal muscular atrophy, which is the disability we're going to be talking about a little bit. And I actually have spinal muscular atrophy as well. So it'll be interesting to see how our experiences are similar and different. So just want to throw that out there to be aware of that. So, just to begin and get started, this is something I'll probably ask everyone when I do their interviews. So I don't want to misgender anyone, but and I see you added it to your name, but your preferred pronouns.
Yeah, she, her. Yeah.
She, her. Okay.
Yep.
And so, to start off, let's talk about what is your disability.
Yeah, so you already mentioned it, but I have SMA type 2. And SMA stands for spinal muscular atrophy. Um, Basically, all of my muscles are pretty weak, and with time, they gradually get weaker. But I'm lucky to be on some of the medicine that's been developed to help streamline my muscles getting weaker and maybe even help improve it. So I'm really privileged to be able to be on that medicine, and I hope to see some improvements in the future, or at least be able to maintain my current ability level as of now.
Mhm. Awesome. So, can you share with us when you were diagnosed with your disability and what that was like for you?
Well, I believe I was about 10 months old. So I do not remember any of that at all. So I don't know what that was like for me. Um, I'm I'm kind of assuming I was kind of uh, blasé about it, I guess. But I mean, I've heard my parents have told me stories about what happened when I was diagnosed, and I I know it was hard for them, but I know now that there's a lot better tests out there, so that if your child does have SMA or your unborn baby has SMA, there's the ability to figure that out a lot sooner, and then implement treatment a lot sooner, which is amazing. Um, so I was about 10 months old when they first started noticing that things weren't going well with me. Like I wasn't able to roll over and stuff like that. So they had taken me to the doctors, and I was diagnosed eventually. I did think it took some time for them to figure that out. But I know it's a lot different today, so I'm definitely happy about that.
Yeah. Um, so when you were kind of growing up, because I know you were diagnosed really young, so you didn't, you wouldn't know how to feel about it as a baby. But like growing up, did you uh, feel different, or like what was that like as you grew older and knowing that when you started realizing you have a disability?
Yeah, I definitely knew right off the bat. My parents were really upfront with it, which I am grateful for, and you know, they were never like, "Oh, you can't do something because you're disabled." So I'm really grateful for that now. But at the time, when I was growing up, especially like middle school, high school era, um, I definitely wasn't happy with myself or my body, and I feel like I tried to reject like my disability as much as possible, and I kind of rejected like the label of disability, even though it's so obvious that I'm disabled. Seems silly to talk about that, think about that now. But I definitely rejected it, and I thought, you know, I'm not disabled, I'm normal, and I tried to make friends with like as many non-disabled people as possible, and like I didn't want to think about other disabled people or try to make friends with them because I thought I was different from them because even though I was physically disabled, I wasn't mentally or behaviorally disabled or cognitively disabled. So I kind of wanted to exclude myself from that part, that identity, that part of my life, so that I could pretend to be not disabled, I guess. And it's really sad when I think about it now because now that I'm an adult and I've been able to find like a community of disabled people on various like social media outlets, which has been really amazing for me. And I've learned so much from other disabled people that I wish I had been in touch with more people sooner. But you know, when you're that age, you want to be like everyone else, and everyone else wasn't disabled. So, um,
Yeah.
but honestly, I feel like I would have been able to um, make more friends with disabled people and accept myself more if I had read books that had disabled characters in them. And that's why I'm so passionate about publishing and about finding disabled authors and reading books that have disabled characters. And I really just want to work with those kinds of books so I can put that out there. So more people, more kids who are like middle school, high school age, um, are not only able to see themselves, but by doing that, they're able to accept themselves for who they are um, without having to reject themselves. And they can see that they're valid even though they have a disability. It doesn't make you any less of a person. So, because I really wish I had that. Um, but yeah, did I answer your question? That was kind of
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. And that's actually really good to know because I feel like I was very similar as well, where I growing up, um, when I was younger and in school, kind of rejected that part of me, the disabled part, and wouldn't even think of myself as disabled. Like, I don't know, it's just and I think you're right about, not having that representation and seeing that in the media. I feel like that affects a lot about the way we view ourselves and see ourselves and what we think um, we can do and stuff. And so I know for me as a kid, so this relates kind of to um, careers and what I wanted to do, but like I always had a million different ideas of what I wanted to do when I grew up. One of which was to be an actress.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but of course, growing up, never saw disability representation in the media, on TV or movies or whatever. And so I just thought, well, can't do that. They're never going to hire a disabled person to act. And so, I think, that has having that representation is so huge, I think, for people to be able to identify and relate with, and to going back to, like you said, not reject that part of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's so important because I feel like even I don't if I have seen like people um who were older than me, even who were independent, who had jobs, who were like living by themselves or whatever. If I had even just seen that, I think I would have been able to like connect the dots, and be like, oh, duh, I can do that too, and then I wouldn't have been so afraid of like what I was. But I'm really glad that I have that support system now, and that um, I'm able to know all that, and I'm definitely privileged to have that information because there's a lot of disabled people out there who don't have that information, and who even people who have been disabled since they were born, and some people who just became disabled. You have to find that your community, and it can be difficult to do that. So I'm really glad I was able to find that in general, and that led me to, wanting to implement that into books.
yeah. So my next question here was, so people within the disability community will refer to themselves in different terms in different ways. And so some people will use identity first language and say disabled person. Some will use uh, person first language. So do you prefer the term person with the disability or disabled person?
I definitely like identity first, the disabled person. Um, just because I feel like it is a part of my identity. It is who I am, and I'm proud of it in some way, in most ways, and I'm not proud of it in other ways. But I like that, and it's also the first thing a lot of people notice about me, and I don't think that's a bad thing because I can use it as a tool to educate people and to sort of express myself as well. So, and I've kind of struggled with this question a bit. Well, not this question, but just the language around myself. Because I'm actively trying to get a job, and um, in publishing specifically. And when I'm writing cover letters, I want to talk about my disability and how that makes me a good candidate for the job, and how I want specifically to work with books about disability for kids and teens. But I always wonder, like, should I be including this? Because is it hurting me and I don't know it? Like, am I not getting interviews or not getting jobs because I'm talking about my disability and like people don't think that I can do the job because I'm disabled? Or should I include it because it's my hook? And it's something that people might find interesting and might want to hire me because of it. So that's kind of been a question for me, um, in terms of language. But I definitely firmly prefer identity first.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I I agree with that. For me, I would say identity first as well. Um, for kind of a couple reasons. One, to me, it's just more simple saying disabled person. It's quicker, easier, more simple. But then two, it's like, once I uh, accepted that part of my identity and stopped rejecting it, it's like, why not call me disabled? Say disabled person. I am disabled. Um, and so I think that was a part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we you might have started talking about this a little bit earlier, but in what ways do you think you were treated differently because of your disability?
Like, do you mean now or in the past or both?
Or both, just in general.
Yeah. I definitely think that when I was a kid, I was given like a free pass more sometimes, for certain things like in school. I might be given more privileges than like other kids because people think I can't do certain things. And I don't really have any concrete examples because it's been a while. But um, I think now I feel like it's a little bit better now that I'm older and people are also more aware of disability and ableism and stuff like that. It's obviously not perfect. I definitely feel like I've been discriminated against in terms of like again like seeking jobs and stuff. Um, it's I like I said I really feel like people don't think I could do a good job or do the duties of a certain position just because I'm disabled and need accommodations. I think that's the biggest thing because like I don't need a lot of accommodations. It's just that working from home is so much better for me because uh, traveling is hard and I have to bring a personal care assistant with me and I don't have access to 24/7 care. So I don't have the physical funds to pay someone to be with me for 8 hours a day during the day and then the rest of my day. So when I'm home working and not needing very much help, I don't really need, I don't necessarily have to be paying someone. So, but if I was going somewhere, I definitely need someone with me. So, um, it's just much easier for me to work from home and now that the pandemic has happened and there's a lot more remote opportunities, it's definitely something that I'm hoping to take advantage of. But again, now that a lot of people are vaccinated and stuff, um, people are going back to work and uh, companies aren't as open or wanting to keep the remote workforce. And because of that, I'll ask at interviews and be like, "Oh, is this position remote?" And sometimes I'll already know the answer depending on the advertisement, and sometimes I won't. And people will say, "Yes, it is," or "No, it isn't." But if it's not, I do my best to make a case for myself. But I feel like that definitely ties into someone treating me different because I just need a different space to work in. But people don't want to make that accommodation. Um, and when I'm out and about in public too, I definitely am treated differently. Like people will like pray over me and stuff like that. And people, if I'm like with my partner, they think they constantly think that he's my brother or something like that, which is funny, but also not funny. So and people will stare at me, obviously, but I'm used to that. Um, but I like to think like in my current jobs, like my job at Includus Publishing, everyone who works there or does work there, we're all disabled, so which is really amazing. And obviously, I'm not treated any differently because we're all disabled, so we know what it's like. Um, and there's a very like sense of community there. Um, and at the other company, Salt and Sage Books, um, there are some disabled people there as well, but everyone's so welcoming and kind that I feel like I'm a valued part of their team, and that my disability has nothing to do with it except for the job I'm doing because I'm using my experience of disability to tell authors if their books are appropriate when it comes to disabled people, and just to make sure that there's no like blatant ableism in there. So I am using my disability for that, but just I'm just treated like I said, like a valued member of their team, and I really like being treated that way, obviously, and not because of my disability, and not because of my disability. I guess if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Um, so that's really great. That you're part of a company now that is inclusive and does make you feel a part of the team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I wish more companies and more jobs and places would be like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's something that I hope to do as well. I have a publishing company as well. I don't have a team yet, but when I get to that point, that's something that I really want to be intentional about is having um, all sorts of people from different backgrounds and abilities and just make it really inclusive place. So that's great. And I also uh, it's interesting you brought up the pandemic and the remote from home opportunities, because I feel like that's something that is not really uh, thought about much. That's the one thing I think that was really good to come out of the pandemic is um, the opportunities, more opportunities to work remotely from home.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that would help a lot of disabled people, um, but we don't really think about these things until we're kind of forced to. Um, and
Yeah.
I know, yeah, and I know for me, it's like, it's the same thing. It's when I started working from home, it was so much better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just having to go out and go somewhere every day, it just takes a lot of energy out of you. Um, and uh, once I'm up and in my chair, I don't need too much help. So when I go out, I don't have anyone go with me. Um, so I can usually go out by myself, but it still takes a lot of energy and tires you out. Um,
You should be using that brain space to towards your actual work, right? Instead of
right.
just being tired. So that's how I see it too. Like, why would I want to have to travel somewhere for? Well, I live about an hour and a half from New York, And that's where a lot of the jobs are, but I would never be able to go there every day for a job.
Oh,
So why would I waste that time, like, and make myself extra tired when I could be using that time towards my work and have like a clearer mind and more ideas that aren't fogged up by my tiredness or lack of energy.
yeah. I definitely know what that was like because I was at a job before I left and was working at home. I was at a job where my job was like an hour away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So just going there back and forth an hour every day, and then the task I have to do at work every day was super draining.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so my next question is: in what ways do you think your childhood was the same as other kids without disabilities?
Um. Well, I went to school, like to public school, just like most kids. Some kids anyway. So that was about the same. I feel like I definitely was given the same opportunities as well. Like, in high school, I did theater a lot, which but I also studied in college, so that kind of got me into that. So I was able to do similar activities as everyone else. I had friends like everyone else. I had a core group of friends that I still have most of them today, which is surprising. And other people that I went to school with, I know, don't have like such like close friendships like I do. So I'm really lucky to have that. In that way, it kind of was the same. And I feel like all kids kind of sort of find their niche at some point, and I was able to do that um, as well. Honestly, there wasn't that much different besides the fact that I couldn't like walk or go out and play sports or something. But it's not like I was interested in sports anyway. Um, I guess the only thing that I'm thinking of differences now, I couldn't like go over to someone's house and hang out, but it never really felt like much of an issue. And I didn't feel like that inhibited me. So I really don't feel like there was that many differences. So I mean, maybe like going to doctor's appointments every once in a while, every couple months was probably different. Um, but I feel like I was very similar to everyone else. I did have like a personal care assistant who would help me at school, but it didn't feel like something that hindered me either. I pretty much had the same opportunities. Um, and I'm pretty lucky that everyone at when I was a kid at the schools I went to were accommodating and they wanted to see me succeed, just like everyone else. So yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think for me, it was kind of the same. I will say I'm super lucky and grateful that my school, I'm thinking about my high school, it was in a small town in Florence, Arizona. And so it's a small town, it's a small school, but I'm grateful that um, they were so accommodating with
Hmm.
me because, like you said, I never felt left out of activities or, things like that. When I used to be in FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America.
Yeah, I feel like my high school had that too.
Yeah. And so we would do these trips to different cities for competitions, and
Hmm.
we would travel and stay somewhere overnight. And my school always had a PCA, caregiver, go with me to help me on those trips. And so, I, for a small school, I was really lucky to have that. And so I was grateful for that.
Yeah, I almost feel like I have more differences and more issues now that I'm an adult than when I was a kid. I think part of that is just that I was a kid and I wasn't super aware of it. And my parents like took care of things for me, but now that I'm an adult, I feel like there's so many more struggles when it comes to like having to prove that I can do things uh, and just like being a disabled person, I feel like things are dealing with like insurance and trying to get approval for stuff. I feel like for me, it's like much worse now that I'm older. But like I said, that could just be circumstance and the fact that I was a kid and I was worried about kid things and not adult things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now we're adults, so we gotta handle all those stuff.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you touched on this a little bit earlier, but are you involved in any treatments or therapies for your disability? And if so, what is that process like?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, actually, I did physical therapy a lot, like once a week or twice a week sometimes. Up until I was like 21, which I'm really grateful for, but I also hated. So, um, but once, I'm sure you know this, but once you turn 21, everything in terms of like medical help and physical therapy and other types of therapies, they're kind of more meant for the kids because it's possible that the kids will get stronger and benefit from them. But once you turn into an adult, there's a lot less like medical care, and your insurance won't want to approve you for like physical therapy and stuff like that. So you kind of once you age out of the system, and after you turn 21, they kind of like kick you to the curb, which is messed up to say the least. But once I believe in 2017 was it? The first medicine for SMA kind of came out. Spinraza, it's called Spinraza, and was able to get started on that pretty soon after it was announced. And it was definitely a struggle for me because you have to get it in your spine. It's a spinal tap or a spinal injection, not spinal tap. And it's every 4 months. So I was having to drive almost an hour away every 4 months to get these injections in my back, which was painful in some ways and time consuming and very tiring in other ways because I have to take a whole day off of work just to do it. Um, and then I had a lot of issues with the side effects. So I had a lot of headaches that were really bad. They're called spinal headaches. And I had a lot of nerve issues and um, muscle issues in the backs of my legs because when they put the needle in, if they hit one of your nerves, like you can feel it down your leg. And I ended up like being in so much pain. Not every time, but it seemed like once a year at least, and I would be out for like 2 weeks. Um, and just in so much pain, I could barely move. So it was pretty awful. But I was doing it because obviously I don't want to get any worse than I was at the time. And um, a lot of people were saying that they saw improvement, but I definitely never did. And actually, I felt like I got worse. My muscles got a little weaker right when I started, but I obviously don't know if that had to do with the medicine or just with what I was going through at the time. Like, it could have happened right before I started taking the medicine. But personally, I think the medicine made me a little worse. But I don't know for sure. That's just my thoughts. Um, but in last January, 2020 in January, I got my last dose of that because I knew the next medicine was coming out. Well, it was really the third medicine, um, because there's a second medicine, but it's only for kids, I think, under 2 and who have SMA type 1 or something like that. So I obviously couldn't get that. But the third medicine is a medicine that is taken by mouth or feeding tube if you use a feeding tube. And you don't have to go anywhere. You take it every day, and it doesn't taste completely horrible, which I'm happy about. So I've been taking that for about 10 months. Um, I really also don't think I've seen much improvement. Um, but I'm also having my own issues with that. I've had to go off it a couple times because of the pharmacy. Um, and they're just not very good with the medicine sometimes, in terms of telling me when there's an issue. So I've had to be off it for a couple days, once even a couple weeks. Um, but I've been told that people who are taking it have said they saw some improvement after a year. So I'm hoping that when it's a year from me, I will also see some improvement. But I'm not really counting on it or anything like that. Um, and I am really lucky that my insurance was able to approve like both of these medications for me without putting up too much of a fight. I know a lot of people, bless you. I know a lot of people don't have that privilege, and I've had to fight to get this medicine, which is stupid, honestly. But so yeah, that's kind of like my treatment journey. And I have tried again, trying to get physical therapy a little bit. When I was on the first medication, and I was going for like 3 or 4 months, but then my insurance was like no, because I wasn't really getting any better. And they don't care if I'm maintaining; they just want to see me get better, basically, which is obviously not going to happen with physical therapy. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that is so. As to this question, I feel like that's one of the ways where we're kind of similar, but also very different in our experience. So for me, I was on Spinraza in 2018. Um, and when I got on Spinraza, um, and that again for those watching, that's the one where you get the injection into your spine. Um, and so for that, uh, I was I didn't have quite the same symptoms that you had. I did have that nerve pain every time they hit a nerve when they went in, and that hurts so much.
Yes.
Um, but it never really lasted for me. So it was more while they were trying to find their way to my spine and kept hitting the nerve. That's when I had the pain. But
Oh, okay.
as yeah, as soon as when it was over, I was fine. Um, and for the most part, I didn't really have any other side effects or symptoms. I think there was only one time that I had a little bit of a headache, but it wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really didn't experience too much other symptoms being on Spinraza. I did notice after a few dosage, I did notice I gained a little bit of my strength back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just, some of the things that I was losing the ability to do, like if I'm laying down and trying to move my arm in a certain position, um, I was starting to lose the ability to move my arm. But after getting on the medication, I started being able to do that again. Um, and then I did notice a little bit of regaining some strength, and then after a while, when the Everesty, the oral medication, when that came out, I did ask my doctor to switch me on that because I couldn't deal with the nerve pain every time I got the injection. And so I switched to the oral medication. And when I got on the oral medication, um, I realized I noticed a little bit of a decrease again. So I felt like I was going back a little bit in my strength. But I still, it's still not as bad as when I was not on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I still have a little bit of that strength before I started the whole process. Um, but it was just a little bit less than what I experienced with Spinraza. Um,
Well,
and
I'm
I,
glad you were able to have some strength back. That's awesome.
yeah, and I did notice though with Spinraza, it was like the in the when right after I got the injection, I would feel stronger, but then over time, um, as it got closer to the next injection, that's when I would start feeling weaker again.
Oh
So
yeah.
like it kind of wore off a bit. Um, And then with the insurance thing, I will say you're lucky because I have to fight my insurance tooth and nail
Mm-hmm.
to pay for anything. They are crap and they won't pay for shit. Um, they um, they definitely did not want to pay for the Spinraza to go to court with them to get them to pay for that.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the Everesty. Right now, I'm on the program, the Everesty program they have for people whose insurance don't want to cover it. They have a free program to
Mm-hmm.
cover the costs for people, similar to what Spinraza has.
Yeah.
And so I'm on that right now for Everesty because again, my insurance is crap. And you would think Eversea is way cheaper than Spinraza. You
Yeah.
would, you would think they would just go for the cheaper option, but no.
They don't need to get better at all, obviously. Yeah. I definitely, I will say I've had my fair share of fighting with insurance for other things. Mostly like when it comes to my wheelchair and stuff like that and equipment. Like they don't want to um, approve very much equipment for me. But I fought with them for almost I I think 4 years to get a robotic arm on my wheelchair. Um,
Um,
and I finally was able to get it just a couple months ago. And it took for me to like drop the ball for like a while because I was going through an appealing process. And I must have gone through like 5 different appeals. And in December of like last year, I missed the deadline for like the next appeal, and I had to kind of start from square one. But
oh,
they didn't even say no the first time. They were like, okay, I guess they were tired of dealing with me. But I definitely had to fight for things, just not the treatment.
yeah.
Um, but I can't believe you went to court with them. That's awesome.
Well, I can't believe you fought with them for 4 years about the arm because I started that process to try to get the Jaco arm as well. Um, but I gave up after I think the second appeal. I was
Mhm.
I know this could take years, and I just I don't have the patience or the energy to keep fighting with you guys. So
Yeah, I honestly have mixed feelings about it too. So it's helpful for certain things, but not for others. So I I'm glad I have it. It does help me stay hydrated, and it helps me be able to use my phone more than I was able to. But it's not amazing, and it takes a while for it to do stuff. So
yeah,
if I had like someone with me, it'd be 10 times easier for me to just be like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" instead of having the robotic arm do it. So yeah, it's a it's good in some ways and not so good in others. And by now, I feel like the technology should be so good that it should be 10 times better than it is the way it works. It should be smaller, easier to operate.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it's not a little bit uh, more high tech.
yeah. Well, I'm still waiting for the day when they will build a robot caregiver. I need that to happen.
Yes, I'd be afraid it would malfunction and like drop me or something. So
Uh, well, yeah, I suppose there is that chance, but I'm just like, they would be so much more reliable than human beings. So,
yeah, and yeah,
um, well, that leads us into the next question, which is, do you have a caregiver that helps you with daily tasks? And if so, can you share what some of those tasks are?
yeah. I have a couple of different caregivers. Um, I mean, I call them personal care assistants. So I pretty much need help with everything physical, like just getting up in the morning, getting ready for the day, um, and the same thing at night, pretty much. I need help like cooking, and helping care for my dog, stuff like that. You know, cleaning my house, all that fun adult stuff. Um, so I have like someone who helps me out during the weekdays, and someone who helps me out during the weekends, and then my partner helps me out in the in between time because, like I said, I need someone to be with me all the time, just in case my head falls back. Because if my head falls back, I can't lift it back up, and it's painful. So I kind of need to be babysat at all times. I like to call it. Um, so yeah, and I'm kind of new to doing this. I recently moved out of my parents' house in September, and my mom was helping me a lot with my care. But when I went to college, I had that's when I kind of started to hire personal care assistants. But it didn't really work out for me at that point in my life. I was kind of working through an agency, and they sent me people, and they're not paid very much, and they're not even paid much now, which is awful. But they're paid even less than I can pay someone now. And so they weren't always great to work with, and I had a lot of issues living at college. So I ended up just having someone help me out during the day, and I would like commute to my parents' house. Um, but now that once I turned 21, I was able to be on a different program that let me hire my own people, which is a lot easier because I get to pick them and interview them and figure out who I want to work with. Um, so it's definitely been a challenge, especially finding people who want to stay with me. So far, I don't think I've had anyone stay with me for more than 3 months. Um, but I'm hoping that will change. And because, you know, honestly, hiring personal care assistants and training them is incredibly um, exhausting, not exhausted. But it's tough. So having to find someone new every couple months is it's like a full time job sometimes. So um, yeah, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's what I have to do to survive. And I'm grateful that But I don't have someone. My partner helps me, and he's great at it, and he has a great attitude about it. So I'm really grateful for that. But yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Uh, um, so I see Heather popped in here in the chat, said, "Hello, I'm in a work meeting, but I wanted to pop in and say hi. Look forward to watching the replay." So, hi, Heather.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for popping in. Um, so, what kind of going along with this, what are ways you think your environment is accessible for you? And what are ways it can be better or made more accessible?
Well, right now I'm very privileged because I just moved to a house that was built entirely for me. So it's very accessible to me right now. When I was living with my parents, the house was in no way accessible. There was 3 floors, and someone had to carry me up and down the steps to my bedroom, to the bathroom, etc. So that was really tough. And now that I live in this house, which I can go in every room pretty much except the attic and the basement, and I can get around a lot more easily using my chair. Um, so that's one way it's incredibly accessible for me. Um, but even in some ways, it's not 100% accessible, and I feel like nothing really is. Um, so, for example, if I want to go outside, I just can't like walk out of my house. I have to either use the service elevator to get into my garage and then go outside, or I have to go on my back porch and roll down the ramp to go outside. But it's not really easy for me just to like go outside for a minute. Like I have to um, get into a different wheelchair actually, and then go outside. So in that way, my environment isn't super accessible, and I feel like that stems towards my wheelchairs. So in my house, I currently use the wheelchair I had since I was 5 because it is very comfortable, and I'm able to do things like this and use my computer a lot easier in this chair. Um, but I have a new wheelchair that I've had since 2018, and it took me almost 3 years to get used to it and to get it adjusted to me, which I think is incredibly awful because, I mean, like I was saying before about technology, it's so advanced, but it took me 3 years to have someone to be able to fix my wheelchair in a way that I was comfortable in it. I feel like there should be like custom moldings for every different kind of person for wheelchairs, and it's just horrible that it took me so long to get comfortable in that chair because things weren't right or things weren't able to be made right. Um, and I'm technically an adult, but I am pediatric sized, so this I was really dissuaded against getting a kid like a pediatric chair, and I was pushed to get an adult chair. And I think that I'm more comfortable in a kid's chair just because of my size. And but I was told that a lot of pediatric chairs aren't meant for like traveling. Like I mentioned, I'm pretty close to New York, so I usually go there a lot for weekend trips and stuff. So, but I was told that they don't make chairs that like are good with pavement for kids, which I think is ridiculous because I'm sure there's kids who need wheelchairs who live in New York. So
Yeah.
uh, that's one way that the stuff that's supposed to be accessible is inaccessible. Um, and I really think that like the wheelchair industry is I mean, they're about the money. They're not about helping people, because if they were, it wouldn't have taken them 3 years to make me comfortable in my chair. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of answers your question. I mean, I really like old bookshops too, and those are rarely accessible. Um, so depending on like what the layout is, I'll sometimes bring a little ramp and use the ramp to get inside. But that also has its own difficulties, and a lot of places aren't made big enough for wheelchairs um, to be in, especially bookstores. So um, that's my that's definitely inaccessible, and something that I wish were a lot more accessible. Um, but on the flip side of that is, a lot of public libraries are wheelchair accessible because they have to be, and they're a lot more welcoming to wheelchair users, and they're usually bigger and have more room. So that's kind of the flip side of that coin, and I'm grateful that I can visit public libraries. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, public libraries tend to be great with accessibility.
yeah,
Um, Bookstores, not so. Which I'm like, uh, it's weird for the major big chain bookstores like Barnes and Noble. I'm like, what are you guys doing? How do you not have a accessible button to open the door?
mm-hmm.
Do you know how heavy your doors are?
Oh yeah, they are incredibly heavy.
It's such a huge chain. It's like, come on.
I actually find that like Barnes and Nobles are pretty accessible for to my standards, but like any like independent bookstores really aren't. Or it's rare when they are. I'm lucky that there's an independent bookstore like 20 minutes from me that's really accessible. But I know a lot of people aren't in the same boat. And I am sorry for them, because used and independent bookstores are my favorite places. So
Yeah. Well, for me, even Barnes and Noble, at least in my part of town, and not accessible if you're by yourself. Like, I won't be able to get in unless someone is nearby that can open the door.
yeah,
So,
I had to travel with someone, so it is accessible for me. But if I was alone, there's like no way. You have to rely on like the kindness of strangers sometimes, and,
yeah.
and that in itself can be kind of demeaning too. So
Um, So the next question goes along with this one. Um, but what type of equipment, tech, or modification do you use to make your environment accessible to you?
sure. Well, my wheelchairs first and foremost. I have actually three of them, but it's really two of them, because one is my second wheelchair, but I'm looking to donate it somewhere, or to give it to someone who really needs a wheelchair. But I have yet to do so, so it's still sitting in my house. So I have this wheelchair that I'm in now is like my inside wheelchair. And then my outside wheelchair is the one I mentioned to you. That one has the robotic arm on it, which is another tech thing that I use sometimes. So there's that. I also use like a shower chair to shower, because I can't stand up in the shower, obviously. Um, and I have uh, like leg braces to keep my feet straight sometimes, which I don't use all the time. I'm supposed to. Um, and then sometimes I use a wrist brace, because my wrist it doesn't stay straight, and it hurts if I don't straighten it, keep it straight most of the time. So I use something like that. In terms of technology, I have like a little app on my phone that lets you use a mouse and type under a computer through your phone, which I like. but I am really look into more assistive technology for computers because I only use a laptop at this point, but I want to get a desktop so that I can keep the screens further away from me, especially because I read a lot on my computer. So, and I like keeping the screen farther away so it doesn't hurt my eyes as much when I'm reading for like long stretches of time. Let's see. I also use my phone like to read sometimes, and a Kindle as well to read, which isn't really like a modification, but to me it is because it's easier than trying to hold the book open sometimes, and stuff like that. Let's see, what else do I use? I feel like there's a lot of simple tricks I use that aren't things that you would think of necessarily. Like for example, um, if I'm drinking something, I tend to use like 5 coasters so that the glass is higher and that I can reach it. So little quick tips like that, something I would use. Um, and I think my favorite modification or piece of equipment is my desk because my desk it can move up and down. So depending on what wheelchair I'm in, I'm able to have it at the height I need it to be, so I can work. And I just love it so much. So I definitely recommend this desk to anyone who needs a desk that goes up and down. It's from IKEA, and I just love it so much.
Uh,
Um,
I've seen those desks at IKEA. They're cool. I have a regular plain desk, but my chair goes up and down, so
oh yeah,
it's
you kind of have to figure out your way around that, right?
yeah. Um. So, what? We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. But people with disabilities often face discrimination in the workplace. So, were there times when you felt discriminated against because of your disability, and how did you handle it?
um, I feel like I don't think I've ever like face to face been discriminated against or anything like that. But I feel like when I've been in interviews and when it comes to hiring, I feel like people have used their bias to sort of like push me off the list to say per se. Just because I don't necessarily disclose that I have a disability to any of my previous jobs, really. I work remotely since like 2017, so I don't necessarily go into an office, so people might not know. Um, but um, especially now when I'm looking for jobs, I just feel like people aren't really considering me as a candidate, even if I'm being interviewed. And I do my best to like follow up with people and sort of ask why I wasn't hired or whatever, just to see how I can improve. And yeah, so I feel like sometimes that's a thing because I've heard from so many people that I have a lot of experience and they're confident that I could do certain things. But that doesn't really help me because no one wants to hire me, it seems like. So I mean, I don't have concrete proof of that, obviously, but I do feel like that plays a huge factor into people thinking I can't do things because I'm disabled. But I don't think I've ever really been like it's been blatantly obvious that someone is discriminating against me in terms of work.
Yeah, I think, and this is one of the things I really want to see changed. And I talk about this in my new book that's coming out next week. Yay.
Yeah,
Uh,
oh my gosh.
yeah, so I forgot to pull up a picture. I should have pulled up a picture of the book, but it's on how to write disabled characters,
Mhm.
and one of the things I bring up in there is talking about showing characters in a variety of different roles and in different careers.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, like we said earlier on in the beginning, that representation in the media, in books and TV and shows and stuff, um, I think seeing a good representation of disabled characters is going to do a lot to help kind of break down some of the stereotypes that people have in their mind of, okay, this person can't do this, they can't do this job, they're not going to be able to fulfill this role in the company. And it's like, no, actually, with the right modifications, people with disabilities can do a variety of different roles and be in different careers and industries. Um, and so, that's one of the things I talk about in the book is showing characters in these different careers and in these different roles. So to normalize it for people. And I think that's super important. Um,
I saw something today actually about disabled doctors, and a bunch of them said that there's so much ableism because a big component of being a doctor is that you're always doing something, that you're working like 24/7, and even non-disabled people can't do that, but they were still being discriminated against because they were in that field and they were disabled and they couldn't do like the overnight rotations and things like that, which is horrible. So
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so hopefully that's something that can get better. And I think also it goes back to uh, have you learned about the medical versus social model of disability?
of course, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, so that's something I talk about in my book as well. And I think part of this goes back to us looking at disability from the medical model, which says, it's a problem that needs to be fixed
Mhm.
or changed. And when you look at it from that view, you're not really thinking about the value that person can bring and add to the company or that role. You're just seeing it as an issue that you have to figure out how to overcome.
We bring so much value because we think about things in much different ways than non-disabled people. Like we're so used to having to figure out things in our life and find a way to do something that's different than how it's usually done. That and I feel like we can bring that skill to any job, and those problem solving skills are really important. So but I just feel like companies don't see that unless you make it so obvious. But
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, so this next question is about inspiration porn, something I talk about in the book. Um, and so there are mixed feelings about this in the disabled community. Some people don't have a problem with being seen as an inspiration, and others do. And so, how do you feel about being seen as an inspiration simply for living your life with a disability?
yeah, I hate it. So yeah, I'm definitely on inspiration for doing anything. Um, and especially in terms of my disability, I've definitely heard like dozens of people say that to me, people I know and people I don't know. So I've definitely heard it a million times, and I'm sick of hearing it. Obviously, um, I have been told that I'm inspiring for other reasons, like work ethic and the experience I have. So I like hearing that, but I also feel a little weird about it because I can't help but think it's somehow tied into my disability, especially if the person who's complimenting me knows I have a disability. And that's usually the case. So I don't know if it's tied to that or my actual skills. So yeah, I definitely don't like it. How about you?
I definitely don't either. I find it pretty demeaning to be inspired by me just because I have a disability without knowing anything else about me. So I definitely think though for strangers that I don't know who tell me I'm inspiring, just like no, that's never a good thing. But for the people who actually do know me, I feel like it's it's more so about my accomplishments and what I've done than just the fact that I have a disability. So I think that's better. But yeah, I definitely don't like the whole, you know, inspiration just because you're disabled type of thing.
And you choose to like actually be a person and have a life, you know.
I didn't hear that last part. What'd you say?
Oh, I said, and you choose to actually be a person and have a life with a disability.
Yeah, right. So, um, okay. So, do you think? What do you think are some misconceptions people have had about you?
I think the biggest one is that I am incapable of doing something that a non-disabled person can do. Um, I also, I think a common misconception is that all disabled people have like intellectual and behavioral disabilities, even if they don't, if they're physically disabled too. Because most of the time, if a stranger is going to talk to me, they usually talk to the person I'm with first instead of me, assuming that I can't understand or something, um, which is something I don't like, which is something that doctors have also done to me, which um, is the worst, honestly. I think that's like the biggest thing that you can't have a normal life. And kind of going back to the inspiration point thing, that I can't be happy or confident. And if I am, that's inspiring, but that's not the norm. I feel like definitely people think that about people with disabilities or disabled people, depending on your how you identify yourself. I I also think that what was I going to say? Wow, I can't even remember. Yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest one. Um, yeah, I don't know why I can't think of any other ones. It's like I can't do anything, which is really not true. There obviously is stuff I can't do. Like I'm not gonna go mountain climbing or anything like that. But I am gonna like wake up and go to work like everyone else and do things I like with my friends and have a pretty much normal life, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's those misconceptions of you can't do much or you can't do anything or you need help with everything or you're not capable or something. Um or that you have an intellectual disability, cognitive disability as well. Which is why I think sometimes it's for lack of a better word, inspiring to some people when they find out that I a writer and a business owner,
Mhm.
um, and I have a publishing company and stuff, and it's like, oh, because I've had people come up to me and just randomly give me cards for like disabled day camps and stuff, and I'm just like, okay. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of that misconception that you can't uh, have a normal life, or or that your life is so much more difficult or hard, or filled with so much pain and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, actually, no, not really.
Also, I feel like a lot of people think that I don't have feeling in a lot of my limbs um, because I can't move them, but
Mhm.
definitely not true. I don't know why a lot of people have been like, "Oh, can you feel this?" And then like touch my foot, and first of all, like don't touch me unless I ask you to. And
Yeah,
second of all, yeah, I can feel everything, so like you don't necessarily need to know that, so I don't like that.
yeah, yeah. So, let's see. This next one. So, there's way much more to a person than just their disability. So, can you share with us what are some of your hobbies and things that you are passionate about?
Yeah, well, I think you probably gathered by now that I'm pretty passionate about books, specifically middle grade and light books. So, um, definitely implementing disability diversity into that. Um, so I'm passionate about that. And one of my biggest hobbies is reading, obviously. Um, and I also like playing like video games, specifically like story based video games, like on a computer that I can use my mouse for and not have to worry about a bazillion controls and stuff since I only had to use a couple fingers. So I like things like that. I feel like those are my only two hobbies. I don't know. I like going to parks. That's fun. Um, I have a dog who you probably just heard barking. So hanging out with her, playing with her, and stuff like that. Uh, walking, taking walks with her. And I like exploring new places. Like I try that. Why I mentioned the bookstores and libraries thing. I like to go to new bookstores and libraries that I've never been to. Just to sort of hang out and see how things are different in different areas. I live in New Jersey, so we're pretty close to like the beach and lots of different boardwalks and stuff. So in the summer, I like traveling to those places. Yeah, I think that about answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's cool. Obviously, we have that in common. Books is something I love as well. Total book addict. Um, there's so much that I love, though, that I'm like, there's so much more to me. I love music, movies, design. I love fashion. There's just so much. Um, So yeah, there's always way more to a person than how they identify. So that's why, I always say, in my online course or in my books, like, make your characters a rounded person.
Mhm.
Make them individual and unique. Give them passions and interests and flaws, and don't just make them one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like I've seen like that the disabled characters thing is that they're like an activist or something like that in terms of disability, and they're always the one like educating the other characters about disability. And I feel like that's true for some disabled people, but not for all of us. Some people don't do that. So I feel like that's like a common trope sometimes. So your disabled character doesn't necessarily have to be an activist or have to be calling out ableism in every chance they get.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point, and true because not every disabled person is an activist. I don't consider myself to be a disabled activist. Um, it's not something I mean, I have no problem talking with people about it if they have questions and bring it up, but it's not something I typically talk about myself. And so I think that's actually really good to know is that if you have a disabled character in your book, they don't have to be um, they don't have to be in that activist role.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Um, so if you don't mind, we can talk a little bit about relationships and um, what your relationship is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've been with my boyfriend for almost 8 years now. So um, I was kind of lucky because a friend of mine introduced me to him. So I didn't have to worry about doing the whole dating app thing, which I'm grateful for because I've heard a lot of horror stories about that. Um, and it's been pretty great. We just moved in together, so that's definitely been a change. And like I said, he helps me a lot with some of my hair, so I'm grateful for that. Yeah, and we'll just see how things go from here.
Yeah. So this next one ties into that. But is it an interabled relationship, or do you both have some type of disability?
No, he's not disabled, so it's technically disabled. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and I know you said earlier that sometimes when you're out with them, people think he's like your brother or something.
Yeah, I think people. I mean, another misconception that I didn't mention before was that a lot of people think that disabled people can't have a fulfilling relationship or can't date, or they're asexual, which obviously isn't true. I know there are some asexual disabled people out there, but that's by choice, obviously. And they're not asexual because they're disabled. It's what they feel. So yeah, and I've been asked that a million times if my partner is like my brother or something. Um, and there's a part of me that wants to like be really snippy about it, but I can't bring myself to do it. So we usually just say no because we're very like mild people and we're not good at like confrontation. So we try to move on, say no and move on, but it's really annoying.
Have you ever gotten, I've seen Squirmy and Grubs, Hannah and Shane,
Mhm.
on YouTube, and I've seen some of their videos and how people talk about their relationship. They're in an interabled relationship, and is some of the comments that people say um, about Hannah and why she's with him. Do you have you ever gotten those type of comments, or has your boyfriend ever gotten those type of comments from people as well?
I don't think so. I think it's different for them because so I feel like since Shane is male, people are more like aggressive towards like the female in a heterosexual relationship. So I feel like that's definitely part of it. Because I don't feel like anyone has ever been like, "Oh, why are you with her?" or anything like that. I think people are just surprised that we're together. Um, I think that's most of it. But no one has ever been like, "You shouldn't be with her because she's disabled." That I can recall anyway. But people just seem surprised. I actually had someone ask me if he was my mother, so that was a little weird because he does not look like a woman. So I'm not sure what that person was thinking, but yeah,
That is so they asked if he was your
yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's weird.
yeah,
At first I thought you said they asked if you were his mother, but then
yeah. We both had baby faces too, so he doesn't look like he could be like a middle-aged woman or anything like that. But I don't know what that person was thinking.
wow, interesting. Um, so my last question on here is what do you really want writers to know when writing a disabled character? So, what should they keep in mind, and what stereotypes do they really need to get rid of?
Well, I think the stereotypes thing we talked about, like, I think getting rid of inspiration porn is definitely number one for me. Because that I feel like that leads to a bunch of other problems. If I see a manuscript that has inspiration porn, it's over. I'm like, here we go, and you know that the other parts of the book are going to be ableist too. Um, and also the notion that I mentioned before about disabled people not being able to date or being asexual, etc. Um, and another kind of minor thing that I have noticed recently in my work is that a lot of authors tend to over enunciate like that person's mobility device if they have a mobility device. I've seen a lot of things where they constantly mention that a character did something with their wheelchair or they moved their joystick or whatever. And I I'm fine with someone mentioning it once or twice. Like you would with a regular character, like she moved to the other side of the room. But you wouldn't say like she moved to the other side of the room with her two working legs or anything like that. And so I kind of find it a bit insensitive when someone says multiple times that they moved across the room in their wheelchair when you could just say they moved across the room and the reader would get that they were in the wheelchair when you first mentioned it. Um, so those are some of my pet peeves. And this kind of ties into inspiration porn, but I don't like when the character who has a disability is cured by the end of the book. Um, that's probably one of the worst ones for me. Um, because I feel like not only does it perpetuate the notion that disabled people can be cured, when a lot of them can't and don't want to because it's part of their identity, but if more um, people who aren't disabled read that, um, and then they start to believe that disabled people can be cured, I feel like that's really dangerous for disabled people. And it can lead to things like eugenics and insurance denying like life-saving things for disabled people. So that one is also one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on that one in my book, chapter 4. You know, don't do the medical or technology cure,
Yeah,
uh, and it is one of my pet peeves as well. And I talked about in that chapter the show Arrow. Have you ever seen Arrow?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Well,
But that particular part, I think.
yeah, there's a character in that show, which I'll try not to say too much for anyone who hasn't seen it who wants to. But there's a character in that show in one of the later on seasons who becomes disabled, and then it's like 3 or 4 episodes later, they cured that person. They have some new technology that they created, and now the person can walk again and they're cured. And I'm just like, I was so frustrated and annoyed with that, with what they did in Arrow. I was like, you guys had so much potential. You could have done something so great with this character and had a badass disabled character, and you screwed it up. In
Yeah, that's true.
Arrow. Like, it just annoyed me so much. But yeah, the magical technological cure is a thing I talked about. And also the I also kind of have a section looking at it from the faith-based side as well,
Mhm.
because I know some writers may have strong ties to their religion and want to bring that into the story and talk about the miracles of healing, God healing a person. And while that, while I understand that sentiment, I feel like that also sends a very dangerous message as well. Um, Especially for those in that faith who do have a disability. It's like, okay, God can heal me, so why isn't He healing me? Am I
Yeah,
am I doing something wrong? Have I sinned? Like, what is it? So it it's very. I feel like it's just a very dangerous message to give off. And what I try to get people to think about is that, if you are a faith based writer, a lot of faiths adhere to the notion that God does not make mistakes. So if he does not make mistakes, then he did not make a mistake creating that disabled person. So
yeah,
so maybe that could be the message of the story rather
right.
than someone needing to be healed or cured.
Yeah. I also like the question, like, if an author is writing a disabled character and the author themselves isn't disabled, I really think that they should be asking themselves, why am I writing this character? And is
Mhm.
it for a reason? Am I doing this to benefit the disability community? Or to move my plot along? Or to have an inspiring character or something like that? Um, because there's so many people out there who aren't disabled who write disabled characters, and 80% of them do it badly. So I feel like if if you don't have to have a disabled character in your novel, then don't. If you're non-disabled, because I feel like those stories need to be told by disabled people. And then we're seeing like all of the content that centers around disabled people is being pushed out by non-disabled people, and that's the majority of it. And then those disabled writers who are actually writing appropriately and well aren't able to produce their work because that spot has been taken up by someone who's non-disabled. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. Um, so that's another thing that really bugs me is that we need to let disabled people tell their stories and not other people, not non-disabled people.
Yeah. I will say, so I agree with most of that. I do disagree a little bit on one thing, which I'll kind of explain. Because to me, I wouldn't say if if someone is non-disabled, that means they shouldn't write a disabled character at all, period. I think for me, I would say, which I talk about in my diverse characters course, is that there's a difference between writing a story with a diverse character
Mhm.
versus writing a own voices story. And
Right.
I think it's really important for writers to understand the difference between the two and know which one they're writing, and examine their motives for writing it. Because uh, um, a book that has uh, diverse characters but is in their own voices, you're simply writing a character from, a different background, but you're not really writing about their struggles or experience, And so I have a video which I will leave linked in the description box for anyone watching this. I have a video that I explain the difference between diverse stories and own voices stories. But some examples I was thinking is in the book um, A Curse So Dark and Lonely.
Mhm.
One is a story with the main character has cerebral palsy. The author doesn't have cerebral palsy, she doesn't have a disability, but that story is not really about that character's struggle with their disability. It's shown a little bit in the story, but it's not the plot of the book. The
Mhm.
plot of the book is that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling.
Right.
And so she has a it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but she has a character that is different. It has a disability, and so we kind of see in the story, we kind of see in small ways how Harper's disability has impacted her life, and I
Mhm.
think she does a really good job at showing how her disability has impacted her life and her views and how she views herself and how others view her. But that's not, again, that's not the main focus or what the story is about. Um, and then I think, and I've seen um, a couple disabled content creators who do have cerebral palsy and have reviewed this book and were really uh, happy with how it was done and how it was written. And so I think it can be done, if you are not disabled to write a disabled character. If you do the proper research, if you have sensitivity readers, um, it can be done. And if you examine your motives of what type of story am I telling and why do I want to tell it,
Mhm.
um, that can be done. Whereas, like you said, how, we want to amplify disabled authors' voices and such. And I think for the stories where it's like, um, for the stories that are own voices, that are like, you know, this, it's centered around disability, that is the plot of the story. It's overcoming their struggles or overcoming something that has to do with the disability. For stories that are centered on that, I would say those are the ones that should be written by disabled authors and disabled writers. Um, so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out the difference there because I do think that there is a difference and it can be done well by a non disabled author,
Mhm.
you know, as long as we know that it's not, it's not an own voices story.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in some way, but I also think that just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. Um, Especially because I feel like that sometimes disabled people are pushed into only being able to tell that overcoming narrative. And they're not able to just be like, hey, I want to write a book where there's a character with a disability who does stuff, and it doesn't have anything to do with their disability, but they are disabled, but the character is disabled. So I feel like we've not been able to tell those stories sometimes. And by a non disabled author writing that story, that sort of erases the chance for a disabled author to tell that story. And I feel like those stories are more important almost than those overcoming stories because it's just showing a disabled person living their life in some way. And I feel like that eventually non-disabled people can write those stories, but I feel like disabled people should get the chance first. And unfortunately, the non-disabled authors kind of um, remove that chance sometimes. And not that they need to do that, obviously, it's just how the publishing uh, industry works, right? But I feel like we should have a chance to tell those stories first.
yeah, I will agree with you on that. Yeah, I do think, you know, um, I do think that disabled voices should be able to tell whatever story they want to tell in however way. And it doesn't always have to be about overcoming something. I know in one of my projects I was working on, I have a story called Project Royals, and one of the characters um, is disabled, but it has nothing to do with the story. It's it's there. It's part of his life and his experience, and you know, a little bit of the motivation for why he does some of the things he does, but it's not what the story is centered on, and it's not about overcoming a disability or anything. So I do agree that, yeah, we definitely should allow disabled authors to be able to write those stories and have chances to do that.
Yeah. And then, kind of on the other hand, you and I both have jobs that, in a way, help non-disabled authors write accurately about disabled people. So if that wasn't a thing, we would kind of be out of a job. So I can't harp too much on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, that is there. So, is there anything else that you think writers should know, or is that about?
And I recently wrote a 20-page letter to an editor for one of my sensitivity reads. So I covered so many things in that letter. Um, and it was a big project for me. And I'm really proud that I was able to put that out there and put all my thoughts somehow that were rolling around in my mind onto Microsoft Word, I guess. And I talked about a lot of different topics, and there's just so much that like I wouldn't be able to uh, physically talk for that long. I don't think about all of it, but there's so much that you have to be careful with. Um, and I mean, I do like suggest that authors do their research with this. And obviously higher sensitivity reader. That's definitely the number one thing you can do. And also like finding the right stage in your book to hire a sensitivity reader. A lot of people hire sensitivity readers at the end when they're all finished with the book and about to publish it, which is definitely the wrong time. Because if I find a lot of issues and you don't have the time frame to edit all those or to fix that, my job was basically moot. It was a moot point, right? Because why did I even go through the effort if you don't have time to address the problems that I'm telling you about? Um, so just really make sure that if you're going to hire a sensitivity reader, it needs to be a lot sooner in your book's life than you would think.
Yeah. Um, I normally say I think it kind of depends on how much uh, how much research you do ahead of time. It's also gonna depend on how much changes you're gonna need to make. So if you do a lot of really good research ahead of time, I think that kind of mitigates some of the uh, chances of needing major rewrites later on. Um,
Mhm.
but I would say, at the time that a lot of people will at least get beta readers to read and give them feedback before they go on to the next step and make more revisions. So I would say when you're getting that beta reader feedback, that's also a good time to get sensitivity readers as well and
Yeah.
get all the feedback at that time and then go into the next phase of revisions. You know. Um, so um, that was my last question, I think. Thank you so much for being here with me today, um, and for talking with me for so long about
Yeah.
disability and writing characters with disability.
I can't
Um,
believe it's only been 2 hours. That really flew by.
yeah, yeah. But I think this was a really good discussion, and hopefully it helps a lot of people out there. Um, and I want to remind everyone, Madison, her Twitter is linked down below in the description if you guys want to follow her. And again, she is an editor and sensitivity reader. So if you want to contact her, I do have her on my directory list on my website of sensitivity diversity readers. And so you can find her on that directory. You're also on Salt and Sage Books, as you said. Um, so if you want to reach out and contact her there, if you need a sensitivity read for your characters, um, and I also do sensitivity reads as well. So you can always contact me on my website as well. And lastly, for any writers out there who are writing a character with a disability, I do want to mention that I do have my book coming out on July 27th. So next Tuesday. Um, and I will actually pull up the cover. I do have the cover to show you guys.
Oh,
So it's a writer's guide to creating diverse characters, disability, and you can pre-order it right now on Amazon or Apple Books or Google Play, wherever you like to pre-order your ebooks, wherever you get your ebooks. It is up for pre-order right now and will be coming out in just a few days. So if you want to learn more about writing disabled characters, definitely check that out. Um,
I can't wait to read it.
huh?
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a quick read. I don't go too in depth because there's so much nuance with disability. There's so many different types and um, different levels and severities. So, it's not something that's super in depth, but I do give a brief overview and go over different topics such as ableism and what we talked about, the magical cure trope,
Mhm.
uh, and different things like that. So different stereotypes to be aware of. Um, so yeah. Um, well, thank you again, Madison, for joining me today, and thank you guys for being here, for watching this. If you're watching on the replay, I hope you guys got a lot of value out of it. Next month, I will be doing an interview with someone uh, from it's someone from the Jewish community, has a Jewish background. So we will be talking about that next month. So if you're interested in that, come back then. And yeah, I will see you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching.